Okay, so let's go ahead and weigh it really quick. Okay, 1 pound. We've got it at 1 pound. I believe that's 13.6 ounces. 1 pound, 13.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, just for fun, let's go ahead and compare that to an alias. Just for fun. So our alias weighs in at, oops, 0, 0. Two pounds, 9.8 ounces. So 2 pounds, 9.8 ounces for the alias. So as you can see, that's quite a bit lighter. All right, so let's go ahead and take it apart. All right, so let's go ahead and take apart the G6R. So first thing I'd probably start with, let's go ahead and take off the eye covers. Now inside of the eye covers, you have your detents and your detent springs. Definitely do not want to lose those, so let's go ahead and set those aside. And while we're here, let's go ahead and take apart the screw that holds the eye cover to the gun. Now, we didn't really want to get into taking this apart, or taking this completely apart, but might as well do it all in one shot. I'm gonna have to drag this gun back out here onto the bench and set up the filling equipment again. So let's go ahead and take off the other eye cover. And once again, let's go ahead and remove the spring, and let's go ahead and remove the detent. Come on. There's the detent. And let's go ahead and remove the screw that holds on the eyes. Now the reason why I'm removing the screw that holds the eyes on is because we're going to slide the front off here to get to the poppet. And now let's go ahead and remove the back cap. Now one thing that's pretty important on the back cap is there's a very loose fitting O-ring inside of the back cap. So when you slide this back into the gun, you definitely want to be really careful of the O-ring that surrounds this right here. A dental pick is going to work really well in guiding the O-ring back into the back cap here, or the back part of the gun. So let's go ahead and set the ram aside. And now the next thing you take off, let's go ahead and take off the feed neck. Need to go one up. And slide on. This is something I've kind of always had a bone to pick with Bob Long about this. I always wish there was a little ridge around here. I had my feed neck fall off my vise once or twice, and just that little ridge machined into the feed neck and into the top here just kind of holds it on there just a little bit more. It's just a little extra sense of security when you're out there playing, but not a really that big of a deal, but just something I kind of wanted to mention. And let's go ahead and remove the high pressure regulator. And this is pretty simple to get out. There we go. Out comes the piston, and here is the washer stack. So we got that. Let's go ahead and set that aside. Okay, and you just want to clean that out, make sure there's no debris in there. And from here, let's go ahead and remove the screw here on the bottom of the grip frame. Now there's 3 screws that are holding the front of this gun together. You've got the screw that goes along the bottom here. There it is. Let's go ahead and pull that out. And then you've got obviously the 2 screws that are on the side of the marker. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to remove the low pressure regulator screw, or the low pressure regulator adjustment screw. And which one of these is it? It's not that one. There it is. And let's just go ahead and, this is the adjustment screw that I'm removing right now. Okay, now once I have that out, Okay, now let me show you how you take apart this low pressure regulator really quick. This is actually reverse threaded, so you have to be careful that you don't try to go into this thing, but you turn this clockwise to get to the piston. So luckily these are two different sized Allen keys, which is really nice. So the two different ones that are inside the kit, but you turn this clockwise to loosen it up. So as you would see here, I'm actually, what normally would be tightening it, and basically did that so that you can get into, so you can tighten it down a little bit easier. So out comes the spring, there's your cap. Here is your piston. And I might need to use a little pair of pliers to get that out. There's the piston. And cool, so we've got the low pressure regulator taken apart. Let's go ahead and set that aside. Now let's get into the gun here. And so I didn't really want to get into this, but let's just go ahead and do this once and get it over with. Unscrew the other screw. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, you can break that gun in half. Let me tell you what, you'll break your arm before you break this gun in half. So, once all the screws go in here and stuff like that, I mean, this is all, precision fit aluminum, and there's no way that you snap this gun in half. Your arm would break before you snap this gun in half. So you really have nothing to worry about. I mean, you've got the feed neck holding this on, you've got the two screws screwed, securing, you've got the screw across the bottom here. There's no real way that you're going to, snap this body in half. It's just not going to happen when you're out there playing. So let's go ahead and slide this forward. And just kind of gently wiggling it. There we go. Oh, took the O-ring with us. So we'll put that back in. And then there is the poppet inside there. And that's just a volume chamber there. Here's the poppet spring. Let's see if we can get that poppet out. Let's go ahead and let's just use the ram here. There's the poppet. And one thing that's kind of nice is that the poppet that's in here is basically the same poppet that's in the vise. So if you wanted to get the low pressure kit, if you've already got a vise and you want to maybe swap the poppets on it and put your low pressure poppet that's in the vise, it's the same one, which is kind of nice. So we'll go ahead and set that there. And there you go. We've taken it completely apart. Now there are a couple O-rings here that you need to be mindful of. There is an O-ring here, which basically seals the bottom here, and then you've got a O-ring here on the back. So you've got two O-rings when this body goes together. You got one across the bottom and one here on the back, and you just want to make sure that those are, you've got lube on them. So let's go ahead and put some lube on them. There we go. There we go. And let's go ahead and just basically clean up. Now, one place you never want to lube on the poppet is this Delrin face here. That's a no-no. Any sort of lube or anything on there, any sort of debris or whatever is going to cause the poppet to leak. So now let's go ahead and stick this back in. There we go. And let's go ahead and put this back together again. We'll just put the spring back into the body, and then we'll just gently slide this forward. There we go. Now, before you air this gun up, you definitely want to make sure that all of these screws are tight, or you're going to get an air leak. So it's the one thing with, when you go to a macro line less body, is that the air is traveling through the body. So if you don't have your body screws snugged up, you're going to blow leaks everywhere. So you definitely want to make sure that all of your body screws, it's not like, where you've got an older gun or something like that, you go around with a loose grip frame. That is not the case when you're going with a macro lineless gun like the G6R, or Victory's the same way, Lux is even the same way. So let's make sure that these screws are snugged up nice and tight. And they are. And let's go ahead and put in the grip frame screw on the bottom. I mean, poppet maintenance, usually if you lube up your ram and you lube up your high pressure regulator and you lube up your low pressure regulator, pretty regularly, there's going to be enough lube going through the gun to lube the poppet. So you know, poppet is not really something that you really want to pay particular, you know, a lot of attention to. It's just not a high maintenance item inside of the gun. So there we go. Let's go ahead and put in those little screws that hold the eye covers on. And here are the Delrin detents. If I'm not mistaken, it looks like it's the same Delrin detents that are on the vise. Put the detent spring there. And let's go ahead and put on the eye cover. Most of the time when I do take apart these guns, I don't really get into getting down to the poppet, but because it's such a unique design with how they've got this gun splitting in half like that, I figured it'd be a good thing to show on the video. So I mean, it's the first paintball gun I've ever seen that, you know, split right down the middle like that. Pretty cool. And let's screw down this eye cover here. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and put a little bit of lube on the ram. There we go. Now this part's going to be a little bit tricky, which is getting this back cap back on, because like I said, that O-ring is pretty loose that's on it. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this in there. Usually I kind of find if you start on one side, you'll see it kind of bulges on the other. And you just give it a little bit of room here and then just sort of wiggle it in with a dental pick just like that. Allows you to get that O-ring in. Definitely don't want to force it, tighten it down and cut the O-ring. Just want to take your time. If you notice any sort of crease or anything like that on the, you know, if you notice there's any sort of gap all the way around, you definitely do not want to put the screw in. And let's go ahead and lube up the high pressure regulator. Now, what kind of lube am I using here? I'd rather not say. It basically, I mean, use whatever you want. Bob Long's going to recommend Dow 55. That works really well. But honestly, if you're maintaining your guns and you're lubing your guns often, most guns are going to be pretty, you know, they're not really going to particularly care, nor are they even going to know what kind of lube you put in them. So, and let's go ahead and put back together the low pressure regulator. In the cap, I'll go ahead and drop the spring down in there first. Or drop the coin down in there first. There goes the spring. And let's go ahead and put a little bit of lube on this piston. And here's the reverse threaded. Now what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to snug this before you put it into the gun. So you definitely want to snug this low pressure regulator cap. And basically you're going to want to act like you're unscrewing it, and that's what's going to snug it. So there we go. And then here at this point, this is why it's really important at this point to have the low pressure regulator test, or the pressure tester, because you know you're going to be basically guessing what your pressures are if you do not have that at this point. So you definitely want to, if you're going to pick this gun up, I mean, you're getting this gun at such a good price as it is, $850. Spend the extra $50 and get the low pressure regulator, or the you know, the pressure tester for the gun. I mean, all of these poppet style guns, the you know, whatever pressure you run it at is so important. And you know, I mean, people are like, oh man, your mark shoots so good. It's because I had a pressure tester for it. You know, oh, your vice shoots so good. It's because I had a pressure tester for it. You know, so you definitely, you know, want to invest in the pressure tester for these guns. I wish more companies would give you pressure testers for the guns. So, but you know, if you can pick one up for your gun, just like you can with these Bob Long guns, I definitely recommend you do it. Okay, and I did notice that they did put some sort of like a blue Loctite on here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the same. Okay, let's put a little drop of blue Loctite on the thread. This is mostly just so it doesn't move around on you when you're out there on the field. Okay, we'll just kind of screw it in flush just to get us started. And let's go ahead and put a tank on the gun. All right, let's see where our pressures are at. Okay, it looks like we're sitting at about 160 on the high pressure regulator, and low pressure regulator is sitting at 0. So let's go ahead and raise the low pressure regulator up to, what did the card say? 75, so let's raise it up to about 75. So just a hair under 80. Oh, obviously low pressure regulators there, you just heard the ram slap back. And we're up to about 50, and we're up to about 60. There we go, up to almost 70. So let's go right here in between 70 and 80. So that looks like that'd be a good place to get started at. So low pressure regulator is the most important one to set with the gauge. Your high pressure regulator is basically going to be whatever you need the gun to chrono at. So let's go ahead and get all the air out of it. Okay, and both gauges are at 0, so let's go ahead and back this out. And one cool thing too is now that we've got that Loctited in place, we give the gun a little bit of time, maybe an hour or so, and that Loctite's going to set. Now you can still adjust it. You can still adjust the low pressure regulator, but that little extra Loctite in there is going to make sure that it doesn't move around on you when you're out there on the field. Just going to throw some lube on those O-rings, and then here we're going to tighten this by hand. Now here's why it's really important to snug that down before you put this back on here, is if you don't snug it down before you put it back on here, once it goes and starts to tighten up, you're actually going to start loosening up your LPR cap. So there we go. We got that on there nice and snug. And I had some lube on my fingers here, so I'm just kind of cleaning this off. All right. And then most of the time you don't want to put any sort of lube on the bolt O-rings, but if you do, Triflow's one that works pretty well. So you just put basically one drop is enough to do your entire bolt. There we go. You don't want to overdo this, because what's going to end up happening is it's going to end up getting in your it's going to end up getting into your eyes and stuff like that. So it's just going to end up polluting up your eyes, which you don't want to do. So let's go ahead and put this on. There we go. And as you can see, we have no leaks or anything like that. We just completely did the maintenance on this marker, all ready to go. Now, one of the ways to figure out if your gun is close to shooting where it should be is I always call it the hand stinging test. One of the things I always recommend, if you're at the field, and your gun's shooting 300 feet per second, take all the paint out of it and this, that, and the other. You put your hand up to the breech. If it stings your hand, you're going to know that you should be shooting close to 300 feet per second. If it doesn't sting your hand or blows your hand back, really hard, then you're over 300 feet per second. If you barely feel it, then obviously you're under 300 feet per second. But one of the things I've always done at the house is what I call the hand sting test. Basically, I'll just take my hand, put it up against the breech, and make sure there's no paint in here, obviously, but I'll put my hand up to the breech, I'll pull the trigger, and if it stings my hand, I know I should be close to 300 feet per second. We'll see how we do with this one. So yeah, felt a little bit of a sting there, so I know I'm shooting pretty close to 300 feet per second. So that should just kind of give me a ballpark as to where the gun is at before I take it out there on the field. So, nothing really too crazy with taking apart the G6R. But as you can see how important it is to have that pressure tester, definitely recommend if you're going to buy the G6R, immediately get the pressure tester. It's definitely worth it. So now that we've got the gun taken apart, we're going to go ahead and do an efficiency test, and then we'll come back for the conclusion. Thank you.